Howdy everyone, and welcome back to The More You Grow. In my last video, we talked all about what is causing the weeds in your garden and how to get rid of them with one easy step. If you haven't seen that video, go check that one out first, because in this video, we're going to level that up to something that is going to add even more benefits to your gardens. We're going to talk about some cover crops, and I'm going to give you some of my favorite cover crops to use and how to use them to get rid of those weeds. So let's go check it out. Cover crops are something you plant in order to either add back to your soil, to suppress the weeds, to enrich the carbon in your soil, lots of different reasons. And I've done a video on cover crops once before, and it was focused on soil nutrients and how to add those back using cover crops. If you want to see that video, I'll put it up above and I'll put it down in the description. In this video, we're going to talk all about how to use cover crops for weed suppression specifically. The first question we have to ask is, what kind of cover crop are you going to use? So the first question would be, is it going to be warm season or cool season cover crop? So cool season cover crops are going to be planted in the early parts of the year or the late parts of the year, and they grow during the cool time of year. A warm season cover crop is meant to be growing during the obviously warm season of the year. So when choosing a cover crop, there are options no matter what season of the year you're in, so there's no too late time to plant a cover crop technically. Another thing you want to think about when considering a cover crop is if it is a crowder or a crawler. I've kind of made up those two categories, but let me explain. So a crowder is where you plant lots of seeds, lots of individual plants that will crowd out the weeds by sheer numbers. So it's going to cover the ground quickly with multiple plants, versus a crawler, which is more of a vining plant that has big leaves that's going to shade the ground out by crawling across the ground and covering that soil surface with the vines and leaves. There are lots of different cool season cover crops you can use, but one of my absolute favorites to use are turnips. I actually did that earlier in the year. I took some video of that and showed you kind of what the benefits of those are. So let's tune into that real quick. So this is a cover crop area, and you may be thinking this looks just as bad and chaotic as the area that's covered in weeds. But most of this is turnips. I planted these as a cool season cover crop, and they've done amazing for a different couple of reasons. These, I like to use them as a cover crop because those big leaves are going to choke out most of the weeds that would come up in the early spring. You plant these as a cool season cover crop that will go into the late spring. I should have harvested these probably about a month ago, but it's okay. It's where we're at. The other reason I like to use turnips as a cool season cover crop is they do an excellent job of being a trap crop as well. So in here, I'll try to zoom in on a couple of things, but lots of pest insects love brassicas like turnips. So I've got most of my pest insects in this rather than in the rest of my garden with my other plants. So now this is the cool thing we can do. When I harvest these turnips, which there's lots of good turnips in there to harvest that we will store for when we want to make turnip soups and things like that. So it's a usable, edible cover crop. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the leaves as a harvest, and I'm going to take them away from the garden, remove the pest with them, and I'm probably going to feed a lot of these pests to the chickens, which they're going to absolutely love that. So this is not only a form of soil management, weed management, it's also a form of pest management. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through here, I'm going to harvest out the turnips, and I'm going to try to leave the weeds. Yes, there are some weeds in this. It's not 100% effective. I'm going to try to leave the weeds I find to kind of show you how good of a job this is at actually choking out weeds and choking out the undesirable plants. I'm going to try to show you the soil in this to show you how great and rich that's looking versus like a bare soil that I have over here that I kind of left as a comparison. And I'll get back to you. Okay, so out of all the turnips, you can see here, this is lemongrass, by the way. Got some trees that I held in that I need to go plant. Another lemongrass, but everything else in here that I left is weeds. But you can see, look how much of the ground was covered by turnips. So, let's look at a couple of options that we have for our warm season plants now that we've talked about a few cool season plants. So a couple of my favorite warm season cover crops to use are going to be some of the flowers like zinnias. These grow big, they grow wide, they grow close together, and that's great for a cover crop because it's going to minimize those gaps, not let the weeds in as easy. Are they going to get rid of all the weeds? No. Just like with my turnips, they're not going to be able to get rid of all of them. The actual amount of weeds is really to a minimum and not very many at all, very manageable. So I like to use zinnias, and even within zinnias, I like to mix up my varieties. I've got some State Fair Giants, which actually bloom sooner than some of my other favorites like the Benary Giants, which they take maybe 60 days, 65 days, so that's going to extend your bloom time, so it's just going to kind of be blooms for a longer period of time. One other thing I like to mix in when I do this is some Cosmos. It adds a different texture, a little bit different flower shape and color sometimes, and it really is another one that the pollinators love, so it's a win-win. And this is a little bit different, but one thing I also like to mix in with my flower mixes is some things like dill. So dill also flowers. They have beautiful yellow blooms, and I really love dill in cooking and using it for different things. It is also a host plant for one of my all-time favorite butterflies, the swallowtail butterfly. Amazing, beautiful things, and this is one of their host plants that they love to use to raise their caterpillars on, lay their eggs on. So I'm actually going to take all of these and mix them all together. I'll show you how I get those put out. This next warm season cover crop is a crawler and another favorite of mine. These are sweet potato vines, and these are actual sweet potatoes, unlike the ornamental sweet potato vines. So this is going to be a productive crop in a couple of different ways. One, it is a crawler. It's going to go out and spread across the ground. Now with crawlers, here's one little tip and trick that I have for you here, is you want to try to help them out just a little bit. Crawlers do not cover the soil as quickly. They take time for their vines to grow, so you're going to have to help them out and weed around the edges until they're able to cover that spot. You could go in and kind of mix in a little bit of the technique from my last video. You could go in and put a non-living ground cover around the edges until it reaches that point. Another benefit of these sweet potatoes are the greens are absolutely delicious. Not a lot of people in the United States know about eating sweet potato greens as something like a spinach alternative, but it's very, very popular in places like Africa and a couple of places in Asia, things like that. But they're absolutely delicious if you take these small tender leaves and saute them with some garlic, some bacon, whatever you want, but they're absolutely great as like a sauteed green or a cooked green. And of course, by the end of it, you get those lovely sweet potatoes that are so delicious, they're so easy to store, and they last forever in storage if cured properly. One of my other favorite warm season cover crops to use are going to be the squashes. And there are things like butternut squashes, there's pumpkins, there's so many different kinds of squashes, and they would fit under the category of a crawler, meaning that they're going to have these really intense vines with these leaves that are going to be like bigger than my body potentially, and they're going to crowd out the ground with those vines. Now here's what I do with my squashes is I go out and I use a non-living ground cover to suppress those weeds. I leave open only a tiny mound to put the seeds in, let them germinate, and to try to keep up with where they are. But as soon as I'm able to get a couple of leaves on them, I will go in and put that non-living ground cover around the base of those as well to try to suppress the weeds close to them. So you may be wondering, why am I planting a cover on a cover? Well, it's just another layer of protection. So as the weeds happen to pop through the non-living ground cover, my living ground cover is going to shade them out with another layer. The other reason is it's putting those living roots into the ground. These guys are going to be helping the microbes out, keeping that soil environment, that soil ecosystem thriving, and it depends on living plants being present. So we don't want to just put a non-living ground cover on if we can help it, and not put something living in with it, so that way we can keep those soil microbes going and happy. There are so many other cover crops out there that you can use, guys, that I could make a video 10 days long. But I highly encourage you to go do some research, check into those, find the one that's going to fit for you and what your garden goals are. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure you hit that like button. If you have any more questions about the things I talked about in these videos, be sure to leave it down in the comments and I will try to get to you on that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that way you're here for when all the new videos come out. Hit the notification button so they let you know when they're posted. So until next time, guys, I hope you'll join me right here on The More You Grow.